This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hey guys, I'm here with a video showing you how I styled my wig for Jinx from Teen Titans. So what you'll need for this look is 2 wigs of the same color, thicker EVA foam, 4mm or 6mm should do it, some pink felt, hot glue, hairspray I recommend got to be, a sewing needle and thread, contact cement, and a wig head and stand to style it on. To start off, I'm taking the extra wig that I bought since I got 2 and removing all of the wefts on that wig. This wig that I found, it was on eBay for about $10. I bought 2 of them and they're very, very thick. So there's a lot of wefts to work with. Unfortunately, I did mess up the first time I tried this and totally destroyed one wig because it just did not work out whatsoever and there was no salvaging it. So I had to later turn to a backup wig. I happened to have that. I was very lucky that matched the color, but it wasn't as thick as these wigs were, and you'll see that later. It doesn't have the netting and as many wefts, and it was very thin. It was a very old, cheap wig from back in the days when eBay wigs weren't that great, and now they're pretty decent depending on your seller. But it's all good. Sometimes it takes a couple tries to get it right, and I'm showing you guys the way that worked in this video. So just go ahead and continue removing all of the wefts from the extra wig. I should note for this, you want a decently long wig. I think this wig falls about mid-back or just past my shoulders. You can always cut it, so the longer the better. Next, you're going to want to place the wig that will be the one that you're styling and going to wear onto a wig head, but inside out, so that you can sew some extra wefts around most of the edge. The only part that you won't need it is where the bangs sit, but you'll want it for all of the rest of the wig, and this is just going to help hide that wig's edge and the sides of it when we flip it the right ways and pull all the hair up. It's going to make it look a bit more natural, basically. You can also hot glue this if you want it to go faster, because sewing it is tedious, and it should hold pretty well. The first time I did this, I sewed everything in, but after I messed up and had to start over, I was running very low on time and opted for hot glue the second time, and my wig holds up really well still. But if you have the time, I recommend sewing because it's just a bit more neater, I guess you could say, and it should hold a bit better, especially in extreme heat conditions. This is when I had to switch to my backup wig, and luckily this wig was very long, so I was able to cut off quite a bit of length and create extra wefts from that, as well as I had plenty left over from the original backup wig since it was so thick. So this to go around, and what worked for me is I created this cone shape from 6mm EVA foam And to create this pattern, it's just two very long rectangles that I glued the two sides to each other and used a heat gun to make it a bit more round and bend the tip upwards. When it came to the length, I just held the piece of paper I had patterned it on up to my head and went with what looked about right as far as like how far I wanted the hair to stick out. And then I glued pink fleece onto that foam to make it so if in case the cone showed through at all, which it didn't end up showing through, there would be pink underneath and it would blend in and not be very noticeable. I also think that the hair stuck better, the hair and hot glue stuck better to the fabric rather than if it was just glued directly to the foam. And just bend over the excess here on the edge, but leave whatever your top part is open and free of fabric because you're gluing that to another foam piece, which is hair. So I glued a very small mini headband shaped foam piece on the inside of the wig that I was using, right on the top of my head where it would, you know, sit like a headband and where the cones could attach to these little pieces that are sticking out of the side, as you can see here. I cut a small little slit in the netting of the wig so these foam pieces could stick out right here that I'm showing you so that I could attach the top of the cones to that. And I use contact cement to adhere that. You'll see me glue it in a second here. Once the cone was glued onto that headband piece, I started pulling the hair that was underneath it in all different directions. So the part that was mostly on top of it, I pulled that up and pinned it aside. Then I pulled the front half forward and the back half backwards and left some hanging down. This was just to make sure that all the hair was pulled up and out of the way so I could later cover the cone with that, you know, that hair, and it wasn't just trapped under the cone and wasted. And after that, I put a lot of hot glue and glued it down onto the wig cap and onto whatever hair was underneath it to make sure that this cone was staying super, super secure, and it did. I have fabric under my wig, by the way, because this wig cap doesn't have a lot of netting, so I needed something else for it to stick to as well. Something that would stick to the wig cap and stick to the cone and the wefts that I was going to glue in. Now we're moving on to gluing the hair up and onto the cone. So on the cone itself, I took a dark pink marker and marked where I wanted to place the black band. And wherever I wanted to place the black band is where I was gluing down the hair to help it stay, because hairspray was not going to do it for this. So I took some hot glue and very small sections of hair at a time and just glued that down right in that middle section there. And then for the underlayer of the hair, I also glued it at the tip to make sure everything stayed towards the top because it did want to kind of just fall off to the sides. And since you're not going to see the underlayer, I figured I could just glue that in place and it would hold fine. And then I could just worry about hairspraying the top layer and having the hairspray hold that part, which is exactly what I did, and you'll see later. Basically, just glue all of the underlayer of the hair down at the band section and at the point, and then once you get to the outer layers of hair, only glue it down at the band section. And as I go along, I glue in wefts wherever I feel are needed, whenever there's like less hair or it looks pretty thin, or there's like a gap because this wig was not as thick. And I use hot glue to glue it in, but again, you can sew it if that's your preferred method or if you have time. Just want to make sure and try to hide the wig cap underneath, that the hair is thick enough and hiding everything else going on under it.
Step right up for another amazing banger by Lex Blaze and Daddy Paul. Touchdown to Heathrow, DP and me, bro. About to hit the club and turn the shoot to a freak show. Look through the peephole, everybody geek, yo. Need to get girl with an extremely deep. See 6 midgets that be fighting, juggling. Maybe it's just me, cause my mind is struggling. Babes, boyfriend is acting like a clown. Know what's going down every time that we are down. Take a look through the peephole, yo. Everybody's getting geek, bro. Stop the hate and let them neeks know that we turn the club into a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club, yeah, we turn the club to a freak show.
So as I started getting to the end, the little point of the hair was getting really thick. Like, it had a lot of hair going on there, and I didn't really like that too much. So I started cutting the hair off at that middle section. Like, I'd pull it up and I'd glue it down, and then I would just cut off the excess hair, since you aren't going to see anything past that, and you aren't going to see that that hair is cut short. It's going to be hidden by the black band that we add in later.
Look at Snow White eating rotten apples. Dirty bass that be coming at you. Roller coasters like a supernova. I'm the ringmaster, this my tabernacle. See you screaming, I'm like, what for? Oh, you pop? Yeah, I got popcorn. I don't wake up on the wrong lawn, so we won't stop. It's a lost cause. Take a look through the peephole. Yo, everybody's getting geek, bro. Stop the hate and let them neeks know that we turn the club into a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club, yeah, we turn the club to a freak show.
After I had done both sides, I started working on the back. So when it came to the back, I glued on some extra whiffs, and I glued it on so that the one that would go to the left was facing the right when I like pressed it down. So it naturally wanted to go to the right, but then I pulled it back to the left. This just helps make the hairline look more natural and keeps the sewn part of the weft from being seen. Then I glued on a small little weft on the top of the wig and kind of cut it short just to hide that top part, because there wasn't really a way I could make this back part go all the way up. The wefts were kind of too close and it was going to look funny. So that was my alternative. And then I cut off these short hairs because these wefts had some short hairs, like baby hairs, in them with like sewn into them, as well as the long hair, so they kind of stuck out here and there. And then I started styling the points. So for the points, I had to cut off quite a bit of length because they were kind of long to start with, and I also, when I did that, made sure to taper it into an even thinner point. So I basically layered it. I just took my scissors and glided down to add a bunch of layers and try my best to make sure that that end came to a nice thinner point. And I used Got2b hairspray to but like style that and make sure everything was going to stay in place, and it did. That hairspray is really good and I recommend it for wig styling. After that, I glued in some really short wefts around like my ears and stuff, and then just trimmed that a little bit to give like little baby hairs that would help hide my little baby hairs that never want to go in wig caps, and styled the other point. And then I let the bangs down. The bangs were already pretty much styled for this wig because I had used this wig before and it had a straight cut fringe that I just swept to the side to make a side cut. Oh, and I used hot glue to glue these black bands into place. And see, now it covered that line of hot glue that we had and you can't even tell it's there.
'Cause you were the devil, you mess with my head, you lied to my mother, you lied to my friends, you said that you'd be there, but this never ends. Don't wake me up.
After the wig was fully styled, I took it off of the wig cap and cut off all of the excess fabric, gluing down any that I needed to the sides of the wig cap, and that finishes this wig. I'm really happy with the results, and it stays on pretty well, like even without bobby pins. I do bobby pin it still though, to be safe, because that's always a good idea. But it like was kind of snug around my head and held up, and I could do stuff like this and tilt my head and it wouldn't fall off. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and have a lovely day. Bye!